Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our third discussion about public education. Tonight, we'll be talking about solving the teacher shortage. If you would go to slide 2, please, Karen. I just want to make a note that we have the chat function turned off, but we will be monitoring the Q&A. So please put questions or comments in the Q&A section. You will be receiving an email following our webinar this evening that will contain a link to the video and other information for you. And if you were unable to join our previous 2 sessions, you can find them on the LWVO YouTube channel. The League of Women Voters at both the state and national level has long valued and supported a strong public education system. Our policies state and recognize that public education is absolutely essential to our democracy. And a key underpinning to a quality public education system is the teacher in the classroom. Next slide. The Department of Education recognizes that teachers are the backbone of public education and therefore the backbone of our democracy. Teachers are critical to society. They help connect the community and inspire students, guiding them in the development of critical thinking skills. The concern over teacher shortages is not new. It existed pre-pandemic, but it has gotten worse. A recent study determined that there are many factors driving an exodus from the teaching profession. These include economic, personal, environmental, and organizational reasons. Some studies indicate that top among these are economic challenges, with low salaries and a flat career structure. Others highlight the impact of job satisfaction and burnout, including workload, and a lack of autonomy and respect. We need to acknowledge that the impact of teacher shortages is higher in high poverty and rural schools. These factors are also influencing teacher candidates who see the impacts of the financial and environmental constraints on teachers. In the decade from the 2010-2011 to 2020-2021 school years, completions in traditional teacher preparation programs declined by 32%. While there does appear to be some improvement, it's up 4% most recently. It's not enough to offset the attrition. So let's look at what's happening in Ohio and what we can do to strengthen our public schools. Our moderator tonight is Susie Kaiser, who has served as LWVO's education specialist on school funding for the last 5 years. She's a public education activist and for 17 years directed a nonprofit organization to support the Cleveland Heights, University Heights schools. Her interest in vouchers is grounded in the devastating effect EdChoice vouchers have had on her community. Last year, she analyzed and reported on the absence of private schools in most Ohio counties and the essential role of public schools. Her weekly visits over the last 35 years to work with students in her neighborhood elementary school keep her passionate about public education. Susie, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you all for joining us to explore this important topic, how to attract and retain a highly skilled teaching corps that can drive education in every classroom in Ohio. Teachers play a special role in our communities. For their students, they are those caring adults who aren't their parents. Teachers are the vehicle by which communities support the development of their young people. That's what public education does. This is an important responsibility. It is important work, and it is hard work. I'm a classroom volunteer because I'm not able to be a classroom teacher. I just feel like it is way beyond the skills that I have. Tonight, with the help of 5 experienced teachers, we will explore the growing concern that there is a teacher shortage. More teachers are giving up on their profession, and too few new recruits are coming through the pipeline to replace them. It is more and more difficult for schools in every community to attract the teachers they need. It's a tall order. Given the importance of a high-quality teacher corps to high-quality education, we need to address whatever the barriers are interfering with teaching as a rewarding profession. Tonight's forum is jam-packed We actually need at least 3 or 4 more of them to give justice to this topic and to the expertise of our panelists. I hope in any case, we will come away with some very important insights. First, that the teacher supply is a multifaceted issue. It will take many kinds of remedies to ensure that more people enter the field and stay. It seems that every stakeholder has something to contribute, and the need for solutions really is urgent. So I always like data to understand an issue. So here are some basics. First, we have more than 111,000 teachers in Ohio's 3,599 schools. That's a lot of motivated, prepared, and well-supported professionals. They don't stay forever, and new teachers are always entering the field. Last year, statewide, slightly more teachers entered the profession than left. The total number of teachers is just the tip of the iceberg in telling the supply story. Teacher supply is best understood as a local issue, and one that is specific to subject area licensures. So we need teachers with diverse credentials to be equally available in every community. That's very hard to achieve. The state doesn't collect data that would actually help us know the current fit between the teacher supply and the classroom vacancies that need to be filled either statewide or on a community by community basis. So we have to take and depend on the statewide general data. The next slide. Teachers leave the classroom every year. Between 2018 and 2021, this is the most recent data I was able to find. The numbers went up and down, but 2021 was the year with the largest exodus. Typically, the largest number of teachers leave in their first 5 years in the classroom. That's the case in our state too. But another concern is that in 2021, the number of experienced teachers leaving increased. This is a serious loss of skilled professionals. The know-how of experienced teachers is not something that is easily replaced. Next slide. At the most basic level, we need enough people to start their careers each year to replace those who are leaving. This table reports on the 6 of the largest license categories, and the number leaving each field, the number entering that field, and the net change for a 5-year period ending in 2022. You can see that elementary teachers are the largest number of newly licensed teachers and also the group with the largest number leaving the classroom. This is the one category where more teachers left than entered the field. In every other field, there are more new teachers than those leaving, but the number is razor thin. And if you think about that as those teachers having to be distributed across 610 school districts, we know that there are shortages that have already begun to happen in some communities. The problem has arrived. Teaching isn't just a calling, it's a profession, and it is a job. We need to look at what makes it a job that teachers want to pursue and one they want to keep. We have to create the conditions where every classroom is guided by well-prepared and invested teachers who have the skills needed to change lives. Unfortunately, lawmakers currently aren't offering solutions that address the root causes. Rather, they're using the shortage of teachers as a justification to lower standards. This is not the path to a high quality education. With the help of our panel of educators, I hope you will emerge with a better idea of solutions that contribute to a strong system of public education. So let me introduce our panel quickly. They are Shanti Kostin, an award-winning educator named this year's District 11 Teacher of the Year. She's in her second career and STEM as her newest focus. Our second panelist was University of Cincinnati Special Education faculty member, Dr. Kate Doyle. Anthony, also known as A.J. Calderon, is the superintendent of the La Brea local school district, which is where he's been superintendent for 13 years. We're also lucky that teachers leaving the field is a special concern to Ohio's 2 teachers union. Both of them have investigated this issue and have many ideas on what to do about it. So we're fortunate to have the big picture view offered by Melissa Cropper, president of the OFT, and Scott DeMauro, the president of the OEA. So each of our speakers has 10 minutes to share their perspective on the teacher shortage and what they see as solutions. So we want to get started with Ms. Costin to kick off our evening as a reminder that teachers, the people you know, the people in our communities, are the human glue that make education work. Shanti, please tell us about your journey to the classroom, what you want for your students, what sustains your ability to give it your best, and what advice you have for people who are considering teaching as a profession. Thanks for being here. I think you might be muted.
My apologies. Thank you for having me. We'll try this again. My name is Shantae Costin. I'm a computer science teacher at Westlake City Schools at Westlake High School, and I'm the 2024 District 11 Ohio Teacher of the Year, and I was also a class as well. My journey is not a straight one. It's definitely a very crooked one, to say the least. I started as a youth services counselor, and from there I became a licensed school-based social worker or school-based therapist for a nonprofit. And when I worked in the schools, I realized that I could have more impact if I was actually in the classroom versus just working with a set number of students.
Excuse me a minute. Do you have your phone on? Because there's an echo going on. Do you have a phone on as well?
No, let me take my Bluetooth off.
Okay. We're going to hear you. We want to hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I had my earpiece in. Okay, so actually I have my degrees in social work and sociology. I went to Case to get my master's, but I realized I could do more work if I was in the classroom, because I realized a lot of times teachers didn't know how to really deal with some students that were not quote unquote your typical students. So I ended up going back to school and get my special education license, and I became a special education teacher in East Cleveland for years, and then I ended up transitioning into being a computer science teacher, and then from there I transitioned over to Westlake to continue computer science. And as you can see here, I have a lot of other things that I do outside of outside of education as well. So that's just a little bit about me. I also do drones and vice president of CSTA and just some classes that I teach. You can go to the next slide. So you can see here, like I said, my journey is not straight. I know I've always wanted to work with kids. I just wasn't sure of what capacity. So I've been very fortunate to have a huge support system everywhere I went that allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And I found that working with high school students in particular has been my calling, and also working with them in STEM has definitely been the catalyst for me, because I know that's where the biggest need is, but also allows us to be critical thinkers. And there's always a job for someone in the STEM field. So that was a big thing as well. You can go to the next slide. So what's the biggest motivation, and what are some essential things to know about teaching? And I actually reached out to some of my cohort in the 2024 cohort as well, for other district teachers. And this is what some of the things they said. So the biggest thing to know and biggest motivation for me is the fact that kids learn. Anybody that works with kids, is always about the kids at the end of the day, and seeing those light bulbs go off and seeing them grow. Even when there's those moments of struggle, and that moment where they're troubleshooting, figure things out, is getting to the other side and seeing that success is the biggest motivation. Other things to know, most successful things we've seen is that parental support, getting that email saying, hey, something's going on with my student. What can I do to make it better? How can we work as a team? Also building that autonomy for students, because eventually, you know, we're working with people that are going to be adults more than going to be kids, and we got to make sure they're able to do things on their own and think for themselves. So the biggest thing is autonomy, but also another one of my colleagues stated that just feeling useful in students' lives, because you know, we're not just here, you know, people say we're here for a paycheck. You know, we're really here because we are basically that line of impact outside of their home. Next slide. So what is motivation? My biggest motivation, like I said before, but the biggest one is student success. And as you can see here, these are students that I've worked with over the years in different spaces. We've done competitions, you know, graduations, you know, prom. At the bottom left of your screen, you can see I had a couple of I call them my jokesters from last year. They graduated, but they bought me a shirt because I mentioned it, because I saw them looking at it for part of a website project. It's Ice-T, the picture of the rapper Ice-T with ice cubes on the top in its lemonade, and they thought it was the best thing ever. And I wore it. They bought it for me, and I wore it, and that was the best thing. So that's pretty much is their success, and building that relationship and bonding with them, and then they know that somebody does care about them. You know, outside of that, you know, the four walls of their home. Next slide. And all that being said, some definite advice for people working with students, kids, especially teachers, and coming in. The biggest thing is getting involved beyond the curriculum. We've all said this amongst my cohort colleagues, anybody I work with, is going beyond the curriculum. And it's not just teaching that for that 45 minutes or 50 minutes you see that student. They want to see you outside of that and talk about things that's non-academic. For example, I'm right now in Starbucks because I couldn't make it home because I was at a track meet for the kids' senior night. So that's why I'm at home. I'm at a Starbucks. I wanted to be here on time. But it's being out there at that track meet. The kids were so excited to see me, and they didn't even know I was coming. And I didn't know I was coming. I just found out like today it was senior night. So, but I wanted to come and support the kids. And they said, no one ever comes to these things. So, and I said, well, I'm here. And, you know, going to school plays, events, concerts. I make sure I go to all the graduations. I have students that I had from last year that are excited for me to see go to their graduation. Students from the school I was before at Shaw High School, I'm coming to their graduation because that's the last set of students I worked with there. Even going to prom, you know, kids seeing us dressed up. And those little things like that are some advice, but some added advice I just pulled out from another colleague is know when to turn it off and always have your boundaries and always do self-care and take care of yourself first, because if we're always pouring out our cup, who's going to fill out our cup? So the biggest thing is self-care, is taking care of yourself. Like I make it a point every month, I get a manicure, pedicure, and I get a massage. That is my self-care for myself. And I take one day out of the month where I just do nothing. I have a do nothing day, and it's in my calendar. People say, what are you doing today? I said, I'm doing something for me, and that's it. They don't need to know I'm not doing anything, but that's my piece of self-care that I do for me. And always have people in your life that's going to keep you grounded, and always have like a listening post, because there are days where you're going to be frustrated or you're going to have a struggle or something happen. And you want to have someone to, you know, bounce ideas off of, or just talk to, just to kind of get it out so you're not so frustrated going into work the next day. And at the end of the day, you know, just let it go. They're kids, and kids are going to be kids. And unfortunately, we're the ones that have to be the adults to kind of just understand that, you know, things are temporary, especially 15-year-olds' emotions, and they may not like what we say or do all the time, but, you know, I always let them know it's in their best interest. And my last piece of advice to teachers and anyone working with teachers is let kids know why you're doing something or why things are happening the way they are, because a lot of times they don't understand. So if we're taking a test and they got all cell phones are put in the pockets and all devices are off and you have to sit in a certain order, well, that's how testing is for the SAT, and that's how testing is for grad school and the MCATs and the LSATs. And, you know, this is to make sure we keep integrity. You may not like to sit next to this person, but it's just for one day and you'll be fine. So just little things like that. So I always explain to students why I do things, and they may not like it or understand it at that time, but I just tell them my reason, and eventually they'll figure it out. So that's pretty much all I have. I hope I made my 10 minutes.
You're doing a great job. You're on
Oh,
schedule.
awesome. I just tell people I love teaching. I love what I do, and I truly, truly enjoy it. Thank you.
That warmth and enthusiasm is what we all need in every classroom. And that's what we're here to try to figure out how to do. So our next presenter, thank you so much, is Kate Doyle. As a faculty member in a teacher preparation program, can you talk to us about why certification matters, what helps, and help us understand what people are thinking now who are entering education and what you're doing about getting more people to participate?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. And I am so excited to follow Shanti, a fellow special ed teacher. And we're also doing some work at UC in the STEM world and growing access for people with disabilities in STEM world. So I'll have to get your number and chat with you. And I'd love to have you talk to my students. You're a fabulous mentor and a portrait of what a great teacher looks like in the field. So thank you. Pam and Susie did an excellent job with the data. My first 8 slides are heavy in data. I'm sorry, that is the higher ed person in me. So if we don't mind just to skip down to slide 8, the role of teacher preparation, I will spare you all of that, but anyone's welcome to access to that if it's helpful to have that data for anyone. But really just want to emphasize that teacher shortages have been going on for a long time, but they are really affecting disproportionately schools that are minority schools or schools that are high poverty. And these students already have enough variables stacked against them. We don't need a teacher shortage to be included in issues that the students have to overcome. So I was special ed teacher in the public school setting for 15 years, and then have been in higher ed now for 9 years. And I love the role of teacher prep, even with all of the challenges we are facing. I still get to work with young people and people of all ages who want to change the world. So can't ask for a better job than that. At UC, we have the more traditional roles in terms of becoming a teacher. We have the traditional undergraduate 4-year degree where you get a mild, moderate, and moderate intense license in special education. And then we just launched our new Masters of Arts in Teaching, and that is for anyone who's a career changer. So any of you out there who are, I think Shanti said she was a career changer maybe, in social work, any of you who have any 4-year degree and you want to go back and be a teacher, we have the program for you. So really excited about that. As a way to increase the teacher pipeline out there. There's been a lot of work recently in Ohio around the apprenticeship model, which is really exciting. We are working with that at UC as just another way to give access to people to become teachers in a more non-traditional route. So really working with districts with people to let them start working and working on their degree at the same time. Sometimes I'll talk to someone, and they'll call and say, Kate, I have a whole family and I work full time. I just can't stop and go back to school, which I would be in that same position this point in my life. So really trying to find out viable options for people who do want to become teachers and allow them to work and have benefits and have quality of life while going through school to meet those requirements. There are a lot of things going on, as alluded to, around emergency licenses, charter schools, kind of letting anyone become a teacher. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why I am not a fan of that in the teaching field. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, trends. Okay, perfect. Why is teacher preparation important? So it really does take a knowledge set and a lot of preparation to become a great teacher. There are people out there who are great at their job, but I don't think that means you automatically become a great teacher, just like I wouldn't be able to become a great social worker or a great dentist if someone just said, here, Kate, you can go do this. So the coursework really does focus on theoretical foundations of education, child development, like Shanti said, 15-year-olds are hard. I have one right now. You need to understand child development. When my 15-year-old, thinks I'm an idiot, right? I always say to my husband, this is developmentally appropriate because otherwise he want to live with us for the rest of his life. So knowing those kinds of things are really important when you're a teacher and not to take it personally, right? This is just part of development. Understanding curriculum and curriculum development, A cornerstone to great teaching is assessment, and assessment is complex. And how do you do that well? That is key for becoming a great teacher. Classroom management, the number one reason teachers leave the field is because of behavior. Our teachers need to walk out into the field with a strong sense of classroom management and how to manage a classroom effectively. Like Shanti said, that a key to it is relationships, but we also do have a lot of evidence and research-based practices that will go a long way in making you feel really successful in your classroom. Evidence and research-based classroom practices, we have a lot of research around how to teach. We need a vehicle to disseminate this to people so they are able to use it in their classroom. And then a key part we're able to offer, which some of these other alternate pathways aren't, are these scaffolded classroom experiences via practicums and student teaching with mentors like Shanti and faculty mentors that prepare them to walk into the field and feel successful. We know that people who are going through these alternate pathways are also the first people to leave the field. So while it may be filling a body in a classroom, it's not putting a great teacher in a classroom, and they're also the first people to leave because they don't feel prepared. So preparation really does matter. All right, next slide.
That's really a good one, really important.
Okay, so some ways to attract students into teaching. The research shows that people actually decide to become teachers by 7th or 8th grade. So if we are following them in their senior year and saying, hey, become a teacher, a lot of times they've already changed their mind or their family has talked them out of it, which I hear a lot. And we can talk a little bit about that. But we need to capture them quickly in 7th and 8th grade. So things like Teachers Academy, being able to volunteer in classrooms are really impactful in that middle school age. For our own prep programs, we need to have a lot of hands-on experiences. Students need to be in classrooms right away. We are really transitioning to field-based coursework, letting my juniors and seniors see Shanti out in the classroom and how she's teaching and all the things she's doing. That is much more powerful than me standing in front of the class and talking from a PowerPoint, right? So being out there, building relationship with teachers, having our classes, 2 of my classes are held out in schools. So they really get that hands-on experience of what it's like to be a teacher and see the things that are amazing, and then also see the things that are hard, that they can walk in with their eyes wide open and have a plan for that. Really emphasizing career opportunities. What's super cool about like an intervention specialist license, which is a word for special ed, is it's K-12. And I taught across the entire grade. Like I lose interest in things. Well, I like a lot of things. So it appeals to me to teach a lot of different things. So I had a K-12 license and I taught all the way across K-12 and loved it. So helping students understand that there's a vast array of opportunity within school systems. And then we have people on here who have become administrators, so helping them understand that that's an option, as well as reading specialists. There's just a lot of options within a school that really can lead to a fulfilling career across the 30 years that you teach. And of course, we need financial incentives, right? When I'm talking to people for that master's in arts, it is $26,000 to come back and get it, right? So having realistic scholarships and financial aid options, talking to them about grant and payback programs to alleviate some of that financial burden is really attractive to students. All right, next slide. All right, increasing and diversifying the teaching workforce. So not only do we need to increase the teacher workforce, we need to diversify it. We know that kids learn best from teachers who look like them, and 75% of our teachers are white and women. So we have a lot of work to do there as well. You can go to the next slide. So some ways to just increase the teacher workforce. We talked with this already said at the beginning, we need more competitive compensation. I think we are paid at a 30% lower rate than people with the same credentials as us. So that needs to be a conversation. We need financial incentives for people to come back. We need supportive work environments. Pam did talk about this meaning, teachers need to feel autonomy. We don't need people who aren't teachers making laws about how we teach. And teachers need to be involved in the decisions about what's happening in schools. We need equitable access to resources. Again, those schools that are the most underserved don't have as much resources, and then they don't have the best teachers because it's hard to teach there. So we need to be addressing that there are resources equally across all the schools that make it attractive for any teacher to go there. And there needs to be collaborative decision making. I think a lot of teachers I talk to are just really exhausted from all the mandates and being told to do things without any buy-in to what things are just happening to us right now, and there's no voice there. So there needs to be a more collaborative decision making about what's happening around education. Next slide. All right, and then like I said, we need to diversify the teaching workforce. We need more diverse teachers out there teaching our diverse students in Ohio. So we have done, there need to be recruitment efforts in terms of I'm gonna talk a little about what we're doing at UC around this, but targeting schools that have a high minority population and recruiting from there for them to become teachers and work in their community. Offering the scholarships and financial aid. I keep saying that, right? There's a lot of money talk in all of this, which seems to be a theme. Having a culturally responsive pedagogy. So that means that teachers need training, administrators need training in terms of who their students are and how they can address the diverse needs of student populations. Again, if 75% of our workforce are white women, we need to think about that they need a skill set to work with students and families that are different from them. So how are we providing that? Students need mentorship and support networks. We've been doing a lot of work around BIPOC alumni association. So we know there are still a lot of microaggressions happening in schools. And if we have teachers of colors going out there, they are leaving quickly because of these aggressions. So they need a support system of people who look like them as well and can support them and are successful in their field. So working on building out those supports for students. And then just really policy and advocacy like groups like this in terms of addressing systemic inequities in education. All right, next slide.
Are you there? You got another minute, okay?
Okay, I'll go fast. This is what's happening at UC. All right. We are partnering with two-year community colleges to make our program more accessible, like Cincinnati State, UC Blue Ash, UC Claremont, so they can get that associate's degree and then transition seamlessly into getting their bachelor's degree. We are developing a lot of post-graduation supports. We know that when they leave, they still need support, right? So induction problems, mentoring, and alumni groups. We have the Noyce Scholarship that is targeting people who have STEM degrees and would like to become teachers. So we have a scholarship for that. We have the EPIC grant, which was scholarship money that came from ODE that is will pay for all their coursework for them to become licensed teachers in areas of high need. Primarily, it's been special ed. That wraps up this summer, but I think we did turn out about 10 intervention specialists from that program, so that was great. We have the BIPOC teacher pathway. We're working with 5 districts with high minority populations to grow their own. So they have access to mentorship, college support, scholarship money, and CCP coursework for them to start on their teacher prep career within high school. And then we have a TQP grant. We will prepare 36 paraprofessionals from CPS to become licensed intervention specialists over the next 3 years. So working with that to get that grant money to really be pushing these incentives through and to grow more teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've covered a lot of really important issues to making teaching a worthwhile profession. So now to change focus a little bit, we're going to ask AJ Calderon to give us a perspective from someone who's trying to get teachers to come to the school district. He's a rural educator from way back, started as a classroom teacher and then a principal, and now is in his 13th year as a superintendent. So thanks so much for being here and help us see how it feels from your point of view.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and our esteemed panelists for welcoming me into the forum and allowing me to participate. I think the work that the League does is exemplary, and to be a part of this forum is truly an honor, and hope to be able to share some perspective that some might find insightful. My experience as a teacher for 11 years was in a rural district in Ashtabula County. One of the things that I noticed was that we were generally a district that was 30 miles from anywhere, if you will. And the common belief there was that, most teachers got hired there and didn't stay long. It was somewhat of a stepping stone. And there were some of the underpinnings to the challenge of being a rural district and being able to try to recruit and retain quality teachers. So I learned that firsthand as a teacher. And a lot of rural districts end up having to have administrative support, resources, proper collegial support, appropriate compensation. Those are all big factors to retaining quality individuals that you want for your kids. Naturally, my progression from teaching and coaching and working with kids led to a career in administration, because I have an administrator who mentored me and saw some potential. So I took that route. And when I went to a smaller district in Trumbull County, I noticed while not rural, being smaller created some of the same problems for recruitment and retention. And then as a superintendent, LaBrea is a quasi, quote unquote, suburb of Warren. Although we are right outside the city limits, our typology through the state is that of a rural district. And so what I've noticed as I've been involved in the hiring process through my administrative career is that the pool of applicants has been indicated here already is generally shrinking. And you do see that you don't get the same number of qualified applicants for openings that you typically would get. And that's from all areas. And I know, Susie, you shared that data. Foreign language is included in that. I'll give you one example. My understanding is some universities are seeing discipline areas what they're considering not supporting anymore. There's a potential that Youngstown State might not be looking at interventionist support for future certification pathways for students. You go to recruit students in, when I say students, prospective teachers, collegiate students in the area of the career trades. You don't find as many prominent qualified candidates even in those programs. So just for example, in our district, we have a family and consumer science opening, quality program, quality facilities in our facilities that are only 19 years old. And we posted it and we had 0 applicants. And so that forces our hand to reconfigure some curriculum offerings that we have so that we have a proper amount of electives for students and we can fill schedules and give them quality experiences while knowing that we're losing quality curriculum options for our students. And it really is disheartening because we're seeing the pendulum shift in Ohio back to some of that career tech in our home schools. And it's not just in the career tech facilities that we all partner with. So seeing that Ohio is pushing more to as the catchphrase is now, college and career readiness, and you're seeing the credentials that students have to have when they leave, you're losing some of that opportunity internally to offer that for students that don't want that pathway in our partnering career tech field. So, we see the state is trying to make some of those, changes and trying to come up with some remedies to, help school districts. I think some of these remedies kind of are filling the gaps. They're patchwork, if you will. One of the things that I know is happening as we try to recruit and retain is we're seeing, let me back up a minute. When you typically go to hire a teacher, school leaders and boards did not have to offer a lot of years of experience on a salary schedule. So the goal was always to hire. The way the salary schedules are structured, the goal is always to replace a retiring teacher with one of the newest people into the field. And that's where you glean cost savings through the next 30 to 35 years of that teacher's career. You want to project quality potential and find the best young person that you can at the cheapest price. What we're finding over the last 3 or 4 years since COVID is that we're having to hire more experienced educators because we're all competing for the top level people. So now I think teachers who are veteran teachers have the ability and the flexibility that maybe didn't exist 5 years ago, because that teacher with 7, 8, 9 years of experience now has some competitive options and will pursue a job and is more likely to get credit for many of those years, if not all of those years, as districts are really trying to recruit and fill those voids that they have in their staffing rosters. So that has been one big change that I have noticed. We ourselves have done that on a number of occasions. And from a budgetary standpoint, that long term, you're bringing people in at a higher level salary schedule, and you're going to have to hold on to them longer at those higher salaries. Now, you're not concerned about hiring a quality educator. What you're concerned about is the budgetary support going to be there long term. Those are practical implications that we all have to worry about. But nonetheless, you're still trying to do the best for kids, and you have to worry about those problems, later in down the road. So it's welcomed in that regard. So, you know, when I look at what the state's trying to do with some of those remedies, we see they're considering allowing military personnel who've been honorably discharged or retired from the military to get licensure. I know in our superintendent associations, we've expressed some dissatisfaction with that. I know that while it's creates some flexibility with the sub teaching licensure relaxation where you don't have to have a degree to be a sub teacher, we're not necessarily too fond of that, but it has created flexibility where if we have local relationships with quality people in our communities, we've been able to get 3 or 4 quality subs that can come in and fill in for those absences. But those 2 instances are examples that concern me as an individual because, you know, it opens the door for allowing people a pathway to education and being in the classroom that I think to some degree we have to express some reservation about what it does to the noble profession of being a public educator. And so we balance the practicality of managing your districts day to day, but you also look from a visionary standpoint of what's the impact on the profession. And I think one of the biggest problems we have is more of the paradigm that we have in the state of Ohio with which we look at education and teachers. And it's a long-standing battle where we're fighting for standing within our communities. But I think if I'm looking at recommendations for the state, and I have made some of these recommendations in private conversations with legislators, I think one of the first things we have to do is we have to stop the pugilism. And that's my term and how I would reference it. I think it's for political expediency that we can make public education and public educators the punching bag. And I do believe that that contributes to the exasperation that some of the people in the profession feel, and many long-term teachers. And how disheartening when I hear people I work with as teachers say, well, I'd never tell my kid to go into public education. I tell them find something else different to do. If I was to do it all over again, I'd do the same thing. I would choose public education. And I get disheartened when I think the spirit in our state and possibly across the country is engaged in this pugilistic activity that for clickbait, likes, and fundraising, we can make cultural claims about public education, and it's dispiriting to those that are in the field. And it takes a lot of mettle and a lot of resolve to withstand that because there is that perceived lack of support. And so I think part of it starts with the paradigm with which we look at education, and we need to make sure that our policies reflect that. So, for example, in our state, we have seen that certain representatives feel like we're going to post curriculum, require posting of all curricular materials and lesson plans and such online for easy access to parents. And what I tell parents when that comes to me is, you already have that right. It's not posted. All you have to do is ask. We'll give you anything that you want. And when I talk to legislators about that particular topic, that's one example where I cite the overburden on our educators for one more administrative for our principals and our teachers that is not about teaching kids. Local control, we are ensuring our teachers are highly qualified, they're prepared, they're planning, they're engaged in partnerships and collegial activity with their colleagues, and we know what's happening locally. So to add more administrative duties is adding that layer of burden on staff that further builds that sense of futility. And I don't know if many of you are aware of Jamie Vollmer, a renowned public school supporter now who didn't start out that way, but one of the most famous things. Yeah, the blueberries guy, the ice cream guy. And one of the things that he did is he shifted his paradigm and his perception of public ed was he created this list of everything that we asked public schools to do since, I don't know what it was, World War II or the 1960s. That poster hangs on my wall, and it takes up the entire length from top of the poster board in my office, the bulletin board, down to the bottom, because it is an extremely long list. If there's a problem in the home, let's go to educators because they're the ones that have our kids for 7 hours a day. If we need dating violence and sexual predator instruction, let's go to public education. So and there's value to that, but it seems like we are the answer to all of society's ills. And a lot of the curricular focus is crowded to some degree with all of those extra instructional points that we have to address. And then on top of that, we have a high stakes test. So I encourage our legislators to filter their policy proposals with a lens of, is this good for the teachers in the field in terms of morale, recruitment, and retention? And I think sometimes we're a little misguided in those policy proposals. We build the futility rather than building the core of teachers available for our students in this state.
I'm going to have to stop you now. We got two more people.
Okay.
But you've captured so much of what's really at issue here. And I have a feeling, Melissa, in the
Can I offer one more suggestion, though?
Of course.
And I would end with this. We are making great progress in the state with the Fair School Funding Plan. And we're a little misguided in our efforts with the voucher boondoggle of $1 billion a year. It really boils down to, we need to value the profession of education, and the Fair School Funding Plan offers hope for competitive salaries, competitive starting salaries. I know there are people in the State House that want to do that, but it's a supply and demand issue. And when we start making education worthy of what is available with other professions with bachelor's degrees, I think we'll find that we're going to attract more people to the field, because it does come down to the human nature of wanting to feel valued and make a livable wage. But again, I appreciate it. Sorry for going over, and I'll see the rest of my floor. Thank you.
I think you're validating a lot of what a lot of people are thinking. So Melissa, do you want to, I know you did research 2 years ago and found a lot of, you found 54% of your members thinking they might leave early. So I know this is on your mind. Can you tell us about your research and what you think we ought to do about it?
Sure, thank you. So just to quickly let people know who I am. I am Melissa Cropper. I'm a library media specialist from Ohio, which is about an hour.
Oop, you're freezing a lot.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
You need to stop me and let Scott go. That's fine, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm a library media specialist from a small town in Southern Ohio. The mom of 5 children, which drives a lot of my work, and a grandmother now also. But I've been a president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers for the past 12 years. So amen to everything that's been said so far. So I'm going to try not to repeat what's been said. But as you indicated, Susie, about a year ago, we surveyed our membership because we were concerned about what we were hearing from the field. And then so we wanted to find out what our members were thinking. And while a lot of people, we've talked a lot about retention, recruitment and retention, we've really been focusing on the retention piece. We know a lot of people are working on recruitment, but we represent teachers. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those teachers in the field. But also we know that if we're not able to teach, if we're not creating the conditions to keep teachers, then we're also not creating the conditions to recruit teachers. So we need to work on fixing these conditions for everybody. And I also want to point out, when we talk about the numbers, those numbers indicate people who actually left. What those numbers don't indicate are the number of teachers who are dissatisfied and who might leave if they had something else to do, but who maybe aren't able to give their best to the classroom because of their dissatisfaction with the job and because of the conditions that are there. So I think the numbers are actually, our concerns should be deeper than even what your numbers indicate. So that gets back to the survey that we did of our membership. We had about 2,300 teachers respond to our survey. That's about 17% of our membership who responded, and which to me was incredible. And what was even more amazing to me was that it wasn't just checking a box. Most of those people wrote out answers to our questions. So that indicated to us that there are some deep, deep problems out there that need to be addressed. About 72% of our respondents have seriously considered leaving their job. 54% of those leaving education completely, the rest of them considering leaving where they currently are to look for something else. And the factors that they indicated in that were that the top issue, it was close, but the top one actually was student behaviors. So again, this classroom management pieces, but since COVID, just seeing an escalation of problems in the classroom. And I want to be careful in pointing out that this is a difficult issue to talk about because we don't want to blame students or blame parents, but it's actually an indication of other problems that exist in our system. Not having the right resources, not making learning relevant to students, and other issues like that are causing a lot of behavior issues in our classroom that our teachers are having more and more problems dealing with. 80% of people said lack of autonomy and respect was a huge issue to them. 77% said that mandates and directives from state policy makers were a factor. 75% said too much emphasis on standardized tests. Another 68% said working hours, meaning like lack of breaks or prep periods, time spent working outside of school hours, covering other classes, things like that. So these are, again, I think these are issues that you've heard other people already mention. What it really comes down to, if we were just to boil it down to a nutshell, again, things that people have mentioned, but respect, relationships, and relevance. So a lot of respect, a lot of lack of teachers feel a lot of lack of respect for what they do now. And I think that our Superintendent Calderon said it correctly. I appreciate what you said there. But we really need to work on how do we give our teachers more autonomy to make decisions. So showing them respect in that way. How do we start talking about the work that they do differently? And the one suggestion that I'm going to put out there that I haven't heard yet is what you all can do: run for school board seats. If you support public education and you support teachers and you want to see our teachers stay in the classroom, run for school board seats, because we're seeing more and more that the people who are running a lot of times are those minority voices in the community who are trying to create chaos in our schools and are pushing their own personal agenda instead of what's best for students and educators and for the public education system. So if we come out with nothing else out of this meeting, if we get a few of you who really care about education to run for school board seats, that would be really, really huge. So run for school board seats. On the relationship piece, again, as was mentioned earlier by our teacher of the year, being able to build those relationships with students is just absolutely key. That's what people go into the profession for, is to work with students and to build those relationships. But there are so many things that get in the way of that. All the unnecessary paperwork. So again, I appreciate the points you made about reducing some of that work and not adding more layers. I mean, our teachers complain all the time. They feel like their time is managed, mismanaged, and micromanaged. I mean, and so that they have no time to actually spend getting to know the students and building those relationships. So it's reducing paperwork. It's having smaller classrooms. But also providing those services for students, the social emotional learning pieces that also allow for those relationships to happen. So bringing the social emotional learning supports back into our schools. And then the relevance piece, again, I think we've seen since COVID, COVID's shown a bright light on problems that were already there. But I think more and more students and parents alike are just saying that our education system does not seem relevant to them anymore. All the testing, all the test prep, all those kind of things, it's just not what students are looking for. And it's all just, to them, it's all just a game that adults want them to play. So we have to look at how are we making school more relevant for students again? How are we connecting them to the broader opportunities that are out there? And that's why I really like all the discussions around career tech education and those kind of pieces. But I also think that we got to find a balance between, I don't want to pigeonhole students into career pathways, but thinking broadly about what are career skills that students can learn? How can we help them explore different opportunities? How can we help them see that what they're learning in the classroom has a connection to something other than a test? So again, looking at those types of pieces. I mentioned social emotional learning, and again, I think student wellness, the money that's gone into student wellness is stuff that is what we need to continue. But I want to follow that up with work that we're doing this year. So as I mentioned, last year, we surveyed our membership with a survey that we made up. This year, we're following that up with a survey that's been done nationally by an organization called Educators Thriving. And they've created a survey around educator wellness. And we've got about 15 districts across the state of all sizes, rural, suburban, and urban, that are going to take this survey over the next few weeks. 26, 27 questions that have been standardized across the country. And what we're hoping we'll be able to pull from this is some data that goes across these demographics that we can lift up to, again, look at educator well-being and what we need to do around educator well-being. So I don't have the answers for you yet, but what I'm going to say is, if nothing else, I'm going to suggest that the state needs to invest in educator well-being as well as in student well-being. Because if our teachers are not feeling well, then they're not going to be able to help our students. And so along with the survey, we are looking at professional development also that works with teachers on how to manage stress. Simple things like breathing techniques and things like that into deeper issues also. Just like with any profession, just like with any human being, just as our first speaker said, Shanti said, we need to make time for ourselves. Educators need to know how to take care of themselves. So for us, there's like two pieces here. It's like, how do we help our teachers take care of themselves and support staff? It's not just teachers, everyone in the school. How do we help them take care of themselves? But then on the other hand, what do we need to do to reduce the stress that's in the profession so that there's not so much of a need to take care of themselves? But while we're working on that piece, we want to help them learn how to take care of themselves. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing. Anything else that I say would really like be a repeat of what you've already heard. So, and I know Scott has more to add to that. So I will stop there and let Scott add his pieces to this also.
Yeah, I know everybody here has to be really interested in this information. So let's keep going, Scott.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Susie, and thank you to the League for this opportunity. Like other people who have been sharing, I also am a career educator. My name is Scott Demar. I'm a high school social studies teacher. Spent most of my career teaching in Worthington outside of Columbus. And for the last 5 years, I've been serving as president of the Ohio Education Association. I want to say amen, ditto, right on, way to go to like all the things that Shante and Kate and AJ and Melissa have shared. I know it's a lot, but I just want to lift up a couple of things. And Susie, I put in our presenter chat a link to our recruitment and retention report from OEA. I don't know if
it's going to be on the
that.
slide that we'll be sharing
Okay,
it.
so you'll share that later.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's already been said, but I do want to one emphasize that the importance of competitive salaries can't be understated. And AJ talked about the need for fully and fairly funding our public schools, to demand that public dollars stay in our public schools. And you're absolutely right, AJ, when you said that this $1 billion voucher scheme is a boondoggle on the taxpayers, because it does take away resources from the well over 80% of Ohio's kids who are attending our local public schools. And so that is important. But the other thing is that, as Kate said, people that go into education right off the bat are penalized by that choice compared to people who go into any other profession. The gap is about 24% when you look at comparably educated people. I saw a piece in Education Week earlier this week, and the average salary is right around $67,000 in Ohio. And if you ask educators what they think they need and would keep them satisfied and make them feel valued, and really it's not just about doing something that's fulfilling work, but also being able to pay bills and take care of your family and not have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. Most people are saying $80,000 is probably more reasonable. We do support legislation that's been introduced by State Representative Joe Miller that would establish a $50,000 minimum teacher salary for the state of Ohio. We think that's an important step. And of course, we need to make sure that This is not just simply an unfunded mandate on local schools. The state has to step up and provide the resources to do that. And it's not just pay, it's also looking at a stable retirement system. It's making sure that you have healthcare benefits. It's also addressing other financial barriers that get in the way for people entering the profession, as Kate talked about. But that's just a basic, necessity. We have to get real about pay. Along with that, going with what has been shared, in order for educators to be respected, in order for educators to feel supported, they do need a voice. And it's been raised multiple times about this importance of autonomy. But I also want to emphasize that part of that comes through the opportunity to be part of something larger, to have a collective voice to influence the conditions in our schools. And the way that happens in the workforce is through organized labor. It's through labor unions. And states that have collective bargaining laws, on average, have teacher salaries that are 26% higher than states that don't. But it's through our unions, through the great work that you heard Melissa talk about, that OFT is leading, and similar kinds of initiatives that we're leading in our locals around the state in OEA, that we can provide the kind of protection and the support to allow people the freedom to do the jobs that they were trained and hired to do. It's so critical. So that educator voice is important. Addressing all of the working condition issues, again, I'll echo what was already said about challenges that we're seeing with student behavior. This is a resource issue on many levels. It's making sure, as Kate said, that educators are well prepared with strategies that are research-based and proven to work. But it's also making sure that we're serious in addressing the mental health needs of students. We have 25% fewer kindergartners entering school ready to learn now compared to before the pandemic. And so just tremendous socialization needs, which means we need educators to have partnerships with social workers and counselors and nurses and health professionals, and really move to expanding the community school model. And I'm not talking about charter schools. I'm talking about true community learning centers where schools are the hub of learning, but those other supports are there for educators and students. And then totally agree with what AJ said. It is absolutely the wrong approach to pursue policy solutions that simply lower the bar. Because if all you're trying to do is to get more warm bodies in the classroom, then you're lowering the quality of teaching and learning, and you create a death spiral. You create a situation where you're setting people up for failure. You're giving students, poor experiences in schools, and that's going to encourage fewer people to go into the profession. We need to make sure that we're getting the right people into the job, and we're giving them the kind of support that they need. And the last thing that I'll just say, and one note too, we've been talking all about teachers. If we're serious about the needs of our students, we also have to extend this conversation to education support professionals, the people who serve as paraprofessionals, who serve as bus drivers, who keep our schools clean and safe, who welcome kids every day. We are having serious recruitment and retention challenges across the board. It's not just classroom teachers. And by the way, also is with administrators and needing strong leadership, strong principals, strong superintendents. So this is a system-wide issue that I think we have to be clear about. But it's been said, I'm going to say it again. We've had for far too long a public policy scheme that is just focused on the wrong things, going all the way back to A Nation at Risk, and then through No Child Left Behind, this obsession with standardized test scores, this obsession with drill and kill, and as Melissa talked about, essentially, kind of forcing students to play the game without meaningfully engaging students in learning. That comes from public policy. A colleague of mine, talked about that as soul-crushing public policies that make this profession less than what it should be, less than what it needs to be. And I will tell you, just like AJ said, I chose teaching because I wanted to make a difference. I chose social studies education because I wanted to instill in my students the decision-making and critical thinking and problem-solving skills that would make them effective citizens in our democracy. And I have had an amazing career. I have had so much fulfillment in the work that I've done with students. But that's not enough. We need to make sure that this is not just a profession that has intrinsic value. We need policy support. We need economic support. We need all educators, all adults who work in our public schools to feel respected and supported in the work that they do, because ultimately that's what will ensure that every single student in this state is set up for success.
I think you've got it. So we have a couple more slides, which we will just send on to you. One of them lists some legislation that's pending, some that's good, some that's bad. And we've got a resource list of things if you want to read more. The research that both teachers unions have done, you can get to that information. I just want to close by saying, if you want to get things right, we need to listen to teachers. I think you can say that after listening to our participants tonight. Thank you so much for your insight, your passion, for helping clarify this is a big issue. It has multiple dimensions. It seems to me it's going to take every stakeholder has something that we can do to contribute to the conditions that it's going to take to make education the respected resource that it is and the role that it plays in our democracy. And if we the league is committed to democracy, and making our public schools strong is the key way in which is an essential part of strengthening our democracy. So I want to thank everybody for joining the call and for the real knowledge of our participants. And I hope we'll do this some more, because I think what we're coming away with is a very important agenda for what our education conversation ought to be about in Ohio. And it ought to stop being about some of the things that our lawmakers are making it. So thank you all again. And let us make public schools strong.
Thank you.
Another day.
Thank you.